Faces dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's a Thursday. We'll be taking your questions throughout the show. They can be tactics, they can be TV, they can be what in the world's going on in Scotland again. They can be what's happening in England now that we've had a couple of games. They can be Gennaro Gattuso won a trophy for Napoli yesterday. Cristiano Ronaldo did not win a trophy for Juventus yesterday. He has not lifted the Coppa Italia just yet. We can get into anything y'all want to. So, to make your thoughts known, you need to tweet at us, at Soccer Down Here. You need to watch on twitch.tv/Soccer Down Here. You can send us an email, soccerdownhere@gmail. We got Facebook. We got Instagram. Whatever you guys want to get into, you can send us a message, ask us questions, join the conversation this morning, because there's a lot of things to get into. And there's a lot of things on the American front to get into. Sam Stejckal's been working overtime at The Athletic. We'll talk about the issues on the TV side for MLS and what that could mean about the scheduling and when we find out about it. We'll talk about Jeff Reuter, who's also working overtime for The Athletic, and what's going on in USL. And there's questions about what the championship looks like, what League One looks like. There's questions about what Las Vegas looks like because Eric Winaldo was fired yesterday, kind of out of nowhere. So we'll get into all of that and anything else y'all want to. And, John, you get to pick where you want to start.
Oh, wow. So I guess to get us to today, you want to start with yesterday and work our way forward?
You can pick wherever you want to start.
England.
Okay, what do you want to start about England? Goal line technology needs to figure out how to work when cameras are blocked. And then VAR needs to figure out where it comes into this conversation because there was a massive disconnect. David Luiz did one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. He somehow completed the hat trick of doom, which was commit an error that leads to a goal, own goal, and red card. I mean, that's amazing to do that in a match. It's the only time it's happened, I think, according to Opta, since they started doing this, or the first time in a long time. It's special, and David Luiz was special yesterday. Mm-hmm. Manchester City was Manchester City, and the mixer in the first game, I think, was a little wonky at the beginning, but he sorted it out, or she sorted it out. And I didn't watch much of the second game. I was watching a game that actually meant something with a trophy on the line. Sorry, all England. Right. I was watching Coppa Italia. It's a final. Like, this is, I'm blown away. Why is everybody like, yay, it's Manchester City and Arsenal, yay? Does that game really mean much? There's
Manchester
a trophy
City
on the line.
Manchester City, I think, was a minus 356.
I could care less. Minus 2,000. Doesn't matter. There's no trophy. And it's like, this game's not very good. It's a final. Nobody cares if it's good. It's about winning. It's not trying to entertain you sitting on your couch. It's about lifting the trophy.
That's what I'm saying.
And Napoli nearly did in regulation. Gianluigi Buffon. Buffon is 42 years old. And he made two amazing saves at the end. The second save didn't get as much play, but that second save was incredible on his hip to get his hand up and deflect it off the post. You think when something like that happens, it's Juve's night. Not in the penalties, it wasn't, and Napoli won. That's where I was. That's what I was watching. I was watching a game that meant something. The games in England, there'll be more. Mm-hmm. But the whole, football's back, it's been back,
It's been back.
You did it. What am I going to watch tomorrow? I'm going to watch England.
Because
that's what you said.
12:15. It was first out of the barn.
That's fine. And there were other games that came on after that.
And I was flipping between them.
Oh, you were flipping. Oh, okay.
There's an issue with flipping?
No, I'm just not a flipper. And you said you were going to watch England first off. There was no discussion of flipping. I'm not much of a flipper. When I get into a game, I get into a game.
Well, for me, I'll start someplace, and then if I lose interest, kind of like I did with Manchester City and Arsenal, then I go other places.
That's different. If it's not a game that means something, like there's a trophy on the line, because the trophy should hold the interest. It wasn't a good game. I was bored.
God, that's so not the point.
Well, no. I mean, if you're not if you don't care, you don't care. But I care about a game that means something, and that game to me was probably the one that I really felt like it was back. Like it was a little cagey. I mean, it was a game that had some emotion to it. It felt different, and that's one of the hard things to replicate. And we've talked about it with the Bundesliga from day one, and England, it was some of the conversation yesterday, and it's been part of the conversation in Spain, although you've got a title race in Spain, so it's a little bit different conversation. Games that mean something are really needed right now because you're missing the other elements that give you a feeling about a match. You're missing the crowd, you're missing the rise and fall of the noise, and no background noise, fake crowd noise, or any of that can truly capture it because you're not seeing it as well. It's a bad game can be made compelling and interesting by the spectators. It can, by the supporters. But a game that means something can rise above all of that. And for me, that final yesterday was, okay, now I feel like we're getting back to where we were because you could see what it meant. You could see what it meant to the players. You could see what it meant to the staff. Utmost respect for Gennaro Gattuso going from being let go by Milan, which looks like a big mistake these days, going in after Carlo Ancelotti was let go because he lost the team at Napoli, lost the trust of the owner, and is a broken team. Zero expectations for Gattuso at Napoli. They're not as good of a team as Juventus. I mean, you could tell. But he came out with a counter-attacking style. But as the game went on, Napoli started to boss the play. And that was really good to see. I was hoping they'd find the winner in regulation. I thought they deserved it. They absolutely deserved the trophy. And for a guy like Gattuso, who, Milan was his club. That was where he played. He didn't take severance. He didn't take a severance check. He didn't want to do any more damage to the club and hurt the club. He wanted them to have all the money they needed because they need the money. And they're going to have to spend more to go get Ralph Rangnick now and change the way they play. But to go from that, which wasn't just a professional disappointment, but a personal disappointment, and then to step into a broken situation. I mean, go back to our Soccer Over There episodes where Napoli is being sent to detention, basically, by the owner, and the players are rebelling, and Carlo Ancelotti's stuck in the middle. There's really nothing he can do to get it right because players aren't happy, owner's not happy. He has to go, and he does, and they bring in Gattuso, and it felt like a stopgap just to finish the season off. And he goes out and he wins a trophy, and they're going to go back to Europe next year. And that to me is more important than anything else we've seen so far.
And I tip my hat to Gattuso with what he did, how he converted the situation into, what is it this morning?
Cheers to you, Gennaro Gattuso.
So
Cherry Coke Energy.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So, as much as we make fun of Gattuso because of sound bites and things like that, you have to sit here and take
I'm not making fun of Gattuso. Hold on. That's not making fun of the man. First, I don't want to get stabbed by a fork. I'm not making fun of Gennaro Gattuso. Tweet that to the world. He's a passionate guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not making fun. It's reveling in the passion.
Reinforcing his passion.
No, we're not reinforcing his passion. Nobody needs to reinforce his passion. Go watch a highlight tape where he wants to fight everybody on the field, including his teammates. That's the passion. We need those people. We need those people in the game. That's necessary for this. That's necessary for the game to be what we all want it to be. I mean, I tweeted a quote, and thank you to Football Italia for posting some of the press conference quotes. This is what he said, and this hits me right in the heart. Anyone who does this job must respect it, because we are lucky. This is why I get angry when I don't see passion, as I have no regrets about my career, and that's what I want these players to say too. I believe in the God of football. When you do it right, you reap what you sow, and it comes back to you. 100%.
Amen.
100%. And maybe it loses a little bit in translation, but I think you get what he's saying. I mean, this is a guy who lives it, breathes it, sweats it, bleeds it. I mean, everything. And to see him get that trophy yesterday was honestly where I felt like, okay, soccer's back. All right, now we're getting games that mean something. We're getting a special moment. This is what we all pay attention to this for. I do have some quibbles, and Chris Ashley from Greenville is with me on this. The virtual crowd.
Yeah.
So Italy with Coppa Italia went the opposite from how everybody else has gone. So we've seen the virtual crowd in Spain along with the virtual crowd noise. We've heard the virtual crowd noise in Germany with no virtual crowd. England, we heard the virtual crowd noise. We saw banners. We didn't see virtual.
And you
crowd.
had the Zoom meeting fans at the Etihad yesterday in both end zones.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. So you had that. Yippee. Italy went with natural noise, but virtual crowd. And it was like virtual crowd doing constant tifos and waving. And it looked like it was the foil that we've seen the Atlanta United supporters use for tifos. It looked like that, just waving the whole time. Chris Ashley says he was getting seasick. And hey, Coca-Cola was the one who was behind a lot of it, and they had their logos all over the place for this thing. That's what a sponsorship will get you, especially when you're Serie A and you're the Italian Federation, and you'll take a check right now. Well, Coca-Cola gave them a check, and Coca-Cola got everything that they paid for.
Coca-Cola got their money's worth.
Virtual crowd with signboards. I mean, at one point, I think I counted about 912 Coca-Cola logos on the screen.
Nice.
I mean, it was insane. Yeah, that's why they were calling John yesterday, Chris. You're right. They were calling him to tell him this was coming. He didn't answer the phone. I might have had a case of cherry Coca-Cola Energy at my doorstep this morning if John had answered the phone. Maybe he'll answer it next time.
I guess I should turn my TV on to see who's calling when they call.
Yeah, if Coca-Cola calls again, you better answer it. I'd like to get that case of cherry Coca-Cola Energy. I am campaigning.
There you go.
Campaigning for that sponsorship. I don't need a virtual crowd for this show or anything like that, or virtual crowd noise for it. We're good.
No.
They did not want to do the virtual crowd for the Twitch broadcast, so that's funny. Tell me about what all happened in England, because outside of the Coppa Italia game, I was kind of bouncing around. I was keeping up with the news. We had stoppage time on the 92.9 Game Facebook page. I wasn't locked into a game outside of the Coppa Italia final. So the goal that should have happened in the first game that did not and could end up being a very costly goal for Sheffield United.
Yeah. And for the record, I have 3 twit contenders for twit for the day, for Thursday. 2 of them are inanimate objects. One of them is an actual person.
How can an inanimate object be a twit?
We're getting to that.
No, that's nothing to do with like what it did. I'm talking about it's not a person. A twit's a person.
So is a twit a person, or can a twit be a thing?
No, a thing is a thing. A person is a twit. Sometimes.
Okay. Well, I just refer to.
You can throw it out there, but I'm going to tell you now that I think people are twits, not things.
Okay. Well, I think that anything can be considered a twit. So I guess in this case, an electronic twit would be Hawkeye.
Okay. Why?
All right. So here we go. Let's go back to game number 1. Sheffield, whose kit I wore in hour number 1 yesterday, and Aston Villa, whose kit I wore in hour number 2. To be topical. All right. So Hawkeye, according to our friend Paul Doyle at The Guardian, has apologized after a, quote, never seen before, end quote, error.
Which you're acting like they're lying. Hold on.
I'm just saying, here's your
headline.
Headline.
But you said never seen before, dripping with skepticism.
In quotation marks. I was emphasizing the quotes.
Okay, so, I'm just trying to make sure, because I don't think they're lying. I don't know why they would.
Emphasizing the quote. Paul Doyle, the makers of the goal line technology used in the Premier League, have issued an apology after the resumption of the season descended into farce. That's Paul's words. When a goal was disallowed because cameras failed to spot the ball crossing the line.
So let's pause there. Let's explain Hawkeye for a minute, because Hawkeye is separate from VAR.
Yes.
They're two different things. Hawkeye is a technology that is used for tennis. And it's going to be used a lot in upcoming tennis tournaments because
when
you're
you
not
hear
going to have
that,
as many linesmen.
Yeah, that's the Hawkeye.
It's going to replace the linesmen in tennis for a lot of tournaments coming up. It is used in offside decisions in England. It's used in some leagues, but not all. We talked about it from an MLS perspective. They explored it, but they didn't opt to go down that road. England and the whole conversation about, offside is offside and 6 inches is 6 inches, it doesn't matter. A lot of that's down to the quality of the Hawkeye system. And it's been quality in a lot of places and a lot of things throughout. This is the first issue that I've ever seen, and they're saying it's never been seen before, so I'm going to back them on this, where the view of all of the cameras they needed was obscured. And that's why the system didn't trigger the watch, I believe, that the referee wears to say, hey, that's a goal.
Yeah.
My bigger problem with it is something that Dale Johnson pointed out. And I thought this was really important, because you go back and you look at the game clock. 41:24 is where the ball appears to cross the line.
It's like 69 seconds.
No, don't jump ahead and confuse. 41:24 is where the ball crossed the line.
Okay.
41:57 is where a replay was shown that the ball crossed the line. For me, that's where VAR is banging whatever VAR button they have to make sure that everybody knows, we got something here.
So it's 28 seconds?
No, 24 to 57.
33. Okay.
Yes. 42:02, so 5 seconds after the replay is shown, play stopped. Play restarted 30 seconds later. So even if you're a little slow on the button, you've got the time, if you're VAR, to say, But this is where it gets a little tricky, because goal line technology is a separate thing from VAR. I'm assuming, and we haven't heard a statement from the referees that I have seen on this, I'm assuming that VAR didn't want to overstep Hawkeye and the goal line technology. And, man, we've had so many conversations about goal line technology, and it's perfect, it's right, it's always right, never question it. That's what we need for everything, and it's perfect. Well, it's not perfect, as we found out. And I don't know what the conversation was for VAR, because you had 35 seconds before play restarted from when TV showed the replay that the ball was over the line. That's enough time to hit the buzzer, hold up, we're checking this. I don't know what they're told to do in a situation like this, because we've never seen it. We've never seen where VAR would have to potentially overrule the Hawkeye system, because that's what it is. But when you get to the big picture of VAR for me and that whole clear and obvious error thing, this is the epitome of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they have to at least hold the play so Hawkeye can confirm. So you can confirm with Hawkeye. Now, I saw some people, and they were trying to make something of the watch, the buzzer went off, or the watch went off at halftime, which was like 5 minutes later. That's a test. They do that all the time. Like that had nothing to do with any of this. It just tells you that the system was working. It wasn't that the system was broken or disconnected. Hawkeye came out afterwards and said, we've never had this happen. We've never had everything obscured in this way. We've never had this happen where we missed something. And they said they missed it. They flat out missed it. VAR has to be in a position to be able to get involved in those. And maybe it's just because it's the first time. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But going forward, in a situation like that, VAR has to hold the play to get it right. Because that's the whole point of VAR. It's to get these things right. They didn't get this one right. And that could be a very big problem for Sheffield United, who should have won the match.
Yep. 2 points left on the table. PGMOL, the Professional Game Match Officials Limited, confirmed the VAR was, quote, able to check goal situations, end quote, but did not intervene after, quote, on-field match officials did not receive a signal, end quote.
That's two different things. That's two different things. If they can intervene on these situations, they saw the replay that should at least make them hold the play because they had time to hold it, the restart. The ball stopped at 42:02. It started 30 seconds later. They saw the replay probably as the play was stopping. It was 5 seconds before when it was aired on TV. You had time to, at a minimum, say, hold, wait, we're checking. That's it. And they should have. There's no way you can argue that they shouldn't have. There's no justification.
Paul Tierney, the match VAR, did not check the incident, and this is from our friends at Sky, and nothing was flagged by the assistant referee to referee Michael Oliver, which suggests he did not have a clear view of the incident.
Well, I mean, go back and read that last part, because that feels like we're trying to find justification, and it's silly.
Okay,
read the last part again.
Paul Tierney, the match VAR, did not check the incident, and nothing was flagged by the assistant.
Okay, he should have checked the VAR. He should have. That's the point. We need to start doing this. The referees in England, we've had Howard Webb come out and say referees made mistakes here. We've had him come out and say that should have been a penalty. That was wrong. They should have done this differently. Let's start doing this, because this way we understand where breakdowns happen and we can fix them. The VAR didn't check it. Well, he should have. Say he should have. You basically said it without saying it because you don't want to throw anybody under the bus. It's not about throwing them under the bus. It's about getting it right. They could have checked it because they said at the beginning of the statement that they can check goal situations. He didn't check it. That was incorrect. The VAR, the video assistant referee, the person, should have checked this. There's no excuse for not checking it. The referee part's secondary, because his tool in that situation is the watch. It's dinging when it goes over the line. It didn't happen. He doesn't know if it did or not because of his positioning. He doesn't know the replays that are being shown. There's nothing he can do in that situation. Referee's fine here. It's the video assistant referee that had to check this. And he had the ability to. And that was the question I had was, can you get involved in Hawkeye goal line technology situations? And you can, so you should. And they didn't this time, and they messed up.
So there you go. Flagged by the assistant referee to referee Michael Oliver suggests he didn't have a clear view of the incident. Hawkeye.
Yeah, no, the referee can't. And again, don't even give any appearance of throwing shade at the referee here. There's nothing the referee did wrong.
According to The Guardian, Hawkeye subsequently said their cameras did not get a clear view because of the presence of players and a post.
Yeah, they were blocked because of the situation, basically. And when the cameras are blocked, they can't do what they do. That's the whole point. It's cameras to be able to see what happened.
The 7 cameras located in the stands around the goal area were significantly occluded by the goalkeeper, defender, and goalpost, and this goes into what you were saying. In over 9,000 matches, that's the first time that has happened. This level of occlusion has never been seen before.
Yeah, I mean, and hey, as we're finding out in everything these days, anything can happen, and it has. And this is one where, look, they get it right. They have always gotten it right. I cannot think of a Hawkeye situation on an offside decision or on a goal line technology situation that I felt like the system was wrong. This is the first time, and I think Dale Johnson nails it. He says the VAR, Paul Tierney, trusted the goal decision system technology, which is the Hawkeye system. He trusted it implicitly. The VAR didn't even consider that there might have been a problem with it. That in itself is understandable. But when that replay comes up and you've got to make a decision, 30 seconds-ish, to say, hold up, we got to check this. You have to. Yeah. I understand the first 30 seconds of it or so. After it happens, the goal decision system isn't doing anything, and you trust it completely. You're not even thinking about it. But that replay comes up, you have to hit the button. You have to say, hold the play. That's Paul Tierney messed up. I understand why he did, because this has never happened with the goal decision system. I get it. Doesn't make it right. And it's going to hurt Sheffield United. But then, see, here's the other element that's coming up into this today, which doesn't really work either. Now you're getting people, because of the implications, 2 points that Sheffield United should have earned. That could be the difference for them to be in Europe or not next year, to be in the Champions League or not. That's a lot of money. That's a huge amount of money, especially for a club like Sheffield United. Now people are talking about, oh, it's a legal case. It's a legal situation, and they should sue. I just don't think you're going to be able to get there, and this is a big point to it, because this is in the IFAB protocol. The IFAB protocol, and again, this is Dale Johnson, ESPN on Twitter. Make sure you're following him, because he explains the referee and VAR stuff better than anybody in the world. Match validity, and this is in IFAB, this is the FIFA rules, this is laws of the game. In principle, a match is not invalidated because of malfunctions of the VAR technology, as for goal line technology, wrong decisions involving the VAR, as the VAR is a match official, decisions not to review an incident, reviews of a non-reviewable situation or decision. The match is not declared invalid because of a refereeing mistake or a malfunction of the technology. So there's no legal case here. There's nothing they can come out and say that, well, because of this, then the match should be invalid. No, that's not going to work unless the courts are going to overrule the laws of the game, which I don't think has ever happened. So it stinks. It's awful. But you can't give them 2 points afterwards, because you don't know how the match would have changed after that goal, if it was a goal. So you can't just say, oh, well, they won because that should have been a goal, because you have to go back and replay it. You would have to, the only fair way to do it, if you wanted to wade into this, if you're the Premier League, would be to restart the match with the same players on the field at 1-0 from the
43rd.
Yeah, from that time on the clock at 42:02 or something, or 42:32, where they were going to restart, because that's where it would have stopped. That restart would have turned into a kickoff. That's the only way you can do it. And that's a big ask. I don't see that happening. You can't just give them points because you didn't play the game that way. You can't declare the match invalid. You can't call it a forfeit. You can't do any of that. The only thing you could do out of fairness would be to replay it from that point at 1-0. And I don't see that happening. Because then you're getting into a slippery slope. As IFAB says, the match isn't invalid because of a malfunction of technology. You can't do this for every bad call. You can't do this for, well, that should have been a penalty, and if he'd had the penalty, then he would have converted it, then that would have been a goal, and we would have won. So you can't do this for every bad decision. That's the whole point. It's awful for Sheffield United, but there's nothing you can do about it now. You have to fix this so it doesn't happen again. The video assistant referees now have to understand that, hey, the goal line technology is not 100% perfect. If you think there's a question, hold the play and check it.
Those 2 points, victory would have taken United up to 5th in the table. Chris Wilder post-match said, and speaking to the referee, he said to me, it had the feel of a goal, but obviously he's got to rely on Hawkeye to make the decision. For someone to tell me that with 7 cameras, this is the first time it has happened in 9,000 games is pretty hard to take. I'd expect that decision to be given down the park on a muddy, foggy Sunday afternoon. The goalkeeper was in the Holt end, end quote.
Yeah, the goalkeeper being in the goal doesn't matter. That's skewing the conversation. It's the ball. The goalkeeper could have his whole body in the goal and have a finger on the ball holding it with half of the ball on the line, and it's not a goal. So throw that part out. That's invalid. Stop skewing the conversation.
Yeah.
Sheffield United got screwed. They should have won this match. That would have put them into 5th place, which, as we know with Manchester City's situation, that could have them in the Champions League. And they're not right now because of a bad decision. So that's how the game goes. It's bad. It's wrong. It shouldn't have happened, but it did, and that's where we're at. Can't happen again. The video assistant referees have to understand that they cannot 100% trust the goal decision system. Maybe 99% trust.
PGMOL does not intend to review its VAR protocols by insisting all future goal line technology incidents are checked by video officials.
No, that's not what I'm saying either.
No, I know.
Understand. I know. But that, again, it's throwing a statement out there that has no meaning. It's a waste of time. No, they shouldn't check everything. But when a clear and obvious error happens in the match, in any way, they should check it. And this was that. It's not going from 100% trust to 0 trust and then holding every goal up to check everything instead of letting the technology do it. No, it's when you see something that looks wrong and then you see a replay that shows I'm almost positive it's wrong, then you hold the play and you check it. That's all. Nobody's asking for anything more than that.
Match number 2 had your David Luiz hat trick, for the wrong reasons. Folks were referring to it as a disaster class instead of a master class, where David Luiz is concerned. So my first question for you, as Arsenal lost to Manchester City, has David Luiz played his last match in an Arsenal jersey?
So now he's canceled because he had a bad day at the office. I mean, he had a bad day at the office. Don't get me wrong,
and his contract is also up for renegotiation, and I believe it expires at the end of the month.
And that's the important part, not the fact that he had a bad game. He had a bad game. He's had bad games before. It's the fact that he's probably a fairly expensive player, and you have an out, and he hasn't performed up to the level that you've paid him, and do you really need him to finish out the season? Where you are, you're not in a great spot. Yeah, it's not because he just had one bad day. Like, let's not get it twisted. It's because he hasn't lived up to his contract. And if it's about a renewal process at the end of the month, well, he might have another game or two to show that he should get a renewal, but this doesn't help him.
He was asked about it after the match. He says, it's my fault, and that's it. It's not the team's fault. It's my fault. I took the decision to play. I should take another decision the last 2 months, and I didn't. The team did well, especially with the 10 men. Coach is amazing, so he says all the right things. He says he'd like to stay at Arsenal beyond June 30, something Mikel Arteta said he wanted before the match. So, yeah, I mean, that's where we are.
You have to see where it goes. Like,
yeah.
That June 30th date's going to get weird for a lot of teams and a lot of players because you've got these kinds of decisions, which we've never seen, like cutting somebody before the season's over. You've got a lot of financial implications on these decisions too, and that's going to make the decision more than anything, I think. But if there's any question about, man, do we want to pay David Luiz this much money to bring him back? Well, he might have answered it in the negative now after that performance, and we'll see if Arteta gives him an opportunity to redeem himself because he's going to have more games before the 30th to play.
3-year deal, $18.72 million. So he was getting $6.25 a year.
You can go get that performance from somebody cheaper. That's the problem. Is it's not about, and people are going to put it that way, and I get it. It's a decision that Arsenal should have made regardless of what happened yesterday. He's not worth that much money before this, and now after this, and when I say this, I'm talking about the COVID-19 outbreak and all the money that Arsenal's lost. You can't justify that contract. There's no way you can justify that contract going forward. You can talk about renegotiating it, or you can talk about saying adios. Like, you can't justify that contract anymore.
And it was also a $34 million fee that was attached to it at the time that he was transferred over.
That has nothing to do with this. That we're talking about the renewal. That's paid. They already lost that money.
Yeah,
they already paid the club to bring that in. That's separate. It's about renewing it for another $6 million a year. Right now, no. And I don't think you could do it if he had a great match yesterday. I just don't think they can afford to pay that for a player at his age and where Arsenal is as a club. They need to rebuild. They don't need to spend that money in that way.
33. He turned 33 back in April, and so that's where David Luiz is right now.
$33 million for a
33 years old.
Sorry, 33 years old, $6 million a year. No, not for what you're getting from him. Bye.
Yeah. And the latest update, Eric Garcia had a nasty injury, and they had to add 11 minutes in the second half in a collision with Ederson yesterday, stabilized in the hospital after the collision, and he had to be stretchered off yesterday. A lot of promise is thought of from Eric Garcia, the 19-year-old out of Barcelona, Spain, but he is stable in hospital after that collision yesterday.
Yeah, most of the comments I was seeing was that it was going to end up being okay. A lot of fear when it happened, but most of the comments afterwards were positive that it was going to end up being okay.
Oh, updating.
We got a little bit on UEFA news real quick. So we mentioned Italy and their deadline for the transfers was going to be October 5th. Well, now UEFA is calling on associations that they're not mandating it. They're calling on all of their members to have a transfer deadline of Monday, October 5th. That would be the close of the transfer window. The reason why is they want their player registration deadline for group stage of Champions League and Europa League to be the next day, to be October 6th. Those things have to be in alignment. So Italy's already there. Everybody else going to be there? I would think so. The World Cup qualifying system for Europe has been approved as well for 2022, and it has not started yet. 5 groups of 6 and 5 groups of 5. This is what was expected. 10 group winners qualify directly. 10 group runners-up to the playoffs, plus 2 Nations League group winners, 3 places available from 3 playoff paths. And then the Nations League finals in 21 will take place in either September or October, but it's not really clear how this is going to fit into the World Cup qualifying schedule, which is set to start at that time too. And you also have the Euro 2020 playoffs that you have to have at some point before next summer, and you got to squeeze those in to a window. So UEFA is now starting to look forward into next season, now that they've got the setup for finishing Champions League, finishing Europa League, now that leagues are playing and have pathways to finishing their season and other leagues have stopped playing. UEFA is starting to set the roadmap for next season, and that's going to be critical. I'll be curious to see if now we're saying, okay, the transfer deadline's October 5th. The European calendar is going to end at the end of August, and then the next calendar is going to start almost immediately. What are the start dates going to look like for leagues? Scotland had said August 1st, their normal schedule for next season. Now you run into that situation we talked about with Rangers still in the Europa League from the past season, but then starting a new season. Do you see leagues hold off the start until at least September 1st? I'm thinking possibly. I think the leagues that are going to finish obviously are going to have to, because they're going to have to wait. But like the Netherlands, Belgium, Scotland, France, are they going to wait till September 1 to restart? I don't know. We'll see.
The reason that I thought you hit the breaking news sounder was that...
hold up. But if I need to hit it again, I'll hit it again.
Shit it again. Within the last half hour, Garcia has been released from hospital, so good news on that front.
Ah, there we go.
And since you mentioned UEFA, and this was the other part of my twit triumvirate for the morning.
Well, what was your inanimate twits?
Well, it was the Hawkeye system or the review system, basically, in that match.
No, you can put it on the VAR. The
/VAR.
VAR would be the twit in that case.
So VAR is the twit in that case.
The person.
Okay.
VAR is a person. Video assistant referee. He has a name. Paul Tierney in this case.
So
VAR is not some magical being.
So Paul Tierney would be A.
Okay. I mean, that's a little harsh, but yes, he acted like a twit yesterday. He didn't check this.
David Luiz for his disaster class would have been B.
100%. I mean, he's the bigger twit between the two in my book.
Okay, so here's number 3.
Okay.
And irony is where we have this one coming from. Since you mentioned UEFA, I'm just going to warm up here a little bit before we read this. From our friends at the Daily Record, Scottish football chief Neil Doncaster has been handed a major role in UEFA after being appointed
in Scotland today.
He's been appointed to the disciplinary board.
Well, who's the twit?
UEFA.
UEFA's a group.
The SPFL chief executive was nominated for the role by the European leagues and will be one of 6 people on, get this, the Control, Ethics, and Disciplinary Body.
on what body?
Control, comma, Ethics, and Disciplinary.
And then
So wait a minute. The guy who couldn't handle an email vote properly. And then allowed the vote to be basically up for bid. He's on an ethics committee? He's on a control committe? He couldn't control a spam filter? And he's on a control committee? Is UEFA really that hard up for people to be on their disciplinary board that they're going to go to Neil Doncaster, who, couldn't handle the discipline of a spam filter?
When a spam filter bests you. According to the Daily Record, the position will see Doncaster have a say in the punishments handed out to clubs who break UEFA's rule, with both Celtic and Rangers falling foul of the CEDB in recent seasons. He's also been joined by representatives from England and the Republic of Ireland, with FA's Bobby Barnes and FAI's Ein Power named on the board.
Well, hold on. Again, you went with the finger pointing of your verbiage there. And I know you're reading from the Daily Record and Mark McDougall, but the way you said it, since Scotland has had clubs that have fallen foul of the rules in recent seasons, that he shouldn't be there. Well, you also mentioned England, and I seem to remember a certain Manchester City who's going to get kicked out of a competition for a couple years, so England can't be there, so nobody can be there. That has nothing to do with this.
Unless they pay the man.
No, that has nothing to do with any of this. Because then you don't have a disciplinary board. You can't say that, well, your country's not clean, so you can't be in it. No, you can say that you screwed up a vote so bad because of a spam filter and the way you handled it that you shouldn't be there. That's why you shouldn't be there. Now, make it clear. It's not because of Celtic and Rangers having problems at different points. It's not because Manchester City did something so you can't have an English representative. It's because Neil Doncaster is the head of an organization that botched an email vote. The simplest of simple things. USL, their players are doing an email vote today. I hope Neil Doncaster has zero to do with it.
Exactly.
He couldn't handle an email vote properly. He then made it worse by acting without any ethics, without any control, so he should therefore not be on this.
He should
Nothing
discipline himself.
to do with Celtic and Rangers and anything else from Scotland. Neil Doncaster can't control Neil Doncaster.
Correct.
So he should not be on this committee. And it's embarrassing for UEFA to put it there. You want another reason why he shouldn't be on the committee? Because his ridiculous little vote thing has now led to all hell breaking loose in Scotland. And we're past the point of like, oh, well, Scotland's silly. This is funny and whatever. This is what we said would happen if they didn't handle these things right. What happened? Hearts and Partick Thistle are claiming £10 million from the SPFL because they were relegated and the seasons weren't finished. They both filed a petition with the Court of Session on Wednesday. Hearts claiming £8 million going from the Premiership down. Partick Thistle going from the Championship down. £2 million. Joint statement, they have, quote, no wish to disrupt Scottish football. They reserve their right to try to delay the start of the next season. Statement says the objective is to, quote, reduce the unfair resolution insofar as it changed the SPFL's rules on promotion and relegation. Don't get that. They're going to seek the £10 million between them. They have not asked for the next season to be stopped yet, but they reserve their right to do so. The SPFL has 7 days to respond to the petition. Spokesman for the league and said its solicitors were studying this carefully. Partick Thistle wasn't going to be part of this before because they couldn't afford it. It's going to be six-figure legal costs, but somebody is funding it for them, so they are going to continue. So, I mean, that's good. It just needs to be questioned. It should have been questioned to begin with. You shouldn't have relegation when you can't finish the season. It's the whole point.
Yep.
Keith Jackson and Gary Ralston at the Daily Record. Now, what's the response? The response typically in these situations would be, man, well, maybe we should have thought of this before. Maybe we should actually get serious about reconstruction and like we've paid it lip service for months upon months, and maybe we should try to figure out a way to make this right. No, that's not the response because it's in Scotland. The response is some of the country's leading clubs are so outraged by the enormity of the compensation claim that they would consider backing any call for the two clubs to be expelled from the senior league setup. A legal letter was also sent to Neil Doncaster, which demanded no promotion relegation or the parachute payments. The Daily Record duo reveals that letters were sent to all the clubs that won promotion, all the clubs in the country. These are the, of course, anonymous quotes because nobody wants to go on record with these ridiculous claims. But a top-flight chief executive told the Daily Record duo, the £10 million claim from Hearts and Thistle is outrageous. If they were to be awarded that sum, then there are a number of Premier League clubs that would risk going under. At a time when Scottish football is on its knees as a result of the pandemic, they are effectively threatening to bury it. Because y'all buried them. Do you not understand that there, buddy? You're doing something that you shouldn't have done, and now you're saying, well, it's going to hurt us if they correct this. Another chairman said, I'm not sure what the rule book says about expelling member clubs, and I hope it wouldn't get to that stage, but it's no wonder clubs are angry enough to be talking of the possibility. So you get called out legally over a question of being relegated unfairly, which, remember, the French courts did find a reason to hold up relegation. I'm not sure where that's going to get resolved just yet, but they did find a reason to say hold up because of the bylaws and rules of the competition. Is that going to be the case in Scotland? It very well could be. And now, instead of saying, could we do this differently? Could we have handled this differently? Do we really need to figure out a reconstruction plan because this is not good for the game? No. The response is, let's kick them out of the league. That's the way to go. CEO from the Championship said, they are holding a gun to the head of Scottish football. Perhaps one of us may have to suggest to Doncaster they are kicked out of the league and Kelty Hearts and Brora are brought in. Which were not brought in because there was no promotion into the league this year. Remember, Brora talked about this yesterday, that they were not allowed to have a playoff to get promoted. So now, because of all of this, and Neil Doncaster, Mr. Control Ethics and Disciplinary Body member of UEFA, has this happening in Scotland. This is an absolute joke of an embarrassment of a league. And they want to say that these two clubs following this and fighting this are going to hold a gun to the head of Scottish football, and Scottish football's on its knees as a result of the pandemic. Well, Scottish football was on one leg before the pandemic. And now you've chopped it off to fight nonsense when you could have dealt with this months ago and dealt with it effectively. You screwed up the vote to begin with about stopping the season when you are one of like 5 any kind of major leagues in Europe that decided not to finish their season. So you had the vote not to do that. You said, or at least Dundee FC said, that they changed their vote so they could fight on reconstruction and changing the format and doing this right. Nothing happened. It was a bunch of yelling and screaming and pointing fingers. And, well, they said it, and I don't like Rangers, so no, we're not voting for that. And then Hearts said this, and I don't like Hearts, so we're not voting for that. And then you just relegate teams without finishing the season. No thought to that being fair, no thought to that being right, no thought to anything. You just do it. And now the teams that got relegated and are going to face massive losses, and again, Hearts, for example, is being relegated not to what the championship was, to a shortened championship. So you're getting relegated and you're going into a league that's only going to play 27 games this year because they can't start on time, because they can't afford to start on time. Yeah, they're kind of ticked off. Partick Thistle kind of ticked off. You should have handled this right to begin with. And now your response to be, let's find a way to kick them out of the league. That's the problem with Scotland. It's never, how do we do this the right way? It's, I don't like them, let's kick them out. Let's punish them. Let's punish them. Let's really get them. I don't like them. Oh, they had a logical idea? Well, it can't be logical. It came from them. I don't like them. They're killing the game. And Doncaster's at the head of the league, and he's not doing anything to fix any of this. Everything looks like it's got favoritism and shadiness going on around the game in Scotland right now. And he's going to a UEFA board about control and ethics?
Mm-hmm.
All of it is an absolute mess. And it's only going to get worse. And if they had thought about this from day one, hey, it makes no sense for us to relegate anybody this season because we are not finishing the season. We're not going to stop promotion because that would be unfair too. That's not, a team not getting the chance to finish their promotion chase is not the same punishment of the COVID-19 outbreak as relegating a team who didn't get a chance to save themselves. That's not fair. And when you get into this, I feel like we said it a week after the stoppage of play, if you start relegating teams without finishing the season, you will go to the courts. And that's where we're at now. France has went to the courts with this. The Netherlands went to the courts with this. They couldn't find a way through it. Scotland is now going to the courts. There's threats of going to the courts in England. This is all a mess because there's no reason to relegate anybody right now. Yes, you have to finish out a different kind of season for the next year. Yeah, you got to get creative. Yeah, you might have to do a league reconstruction for a short period of time. It's probably a smart thing to do anyway when your league is the weirdest format I have ever seen. To have this thing where you separate the league in half and teams only play the teams in their half in the last few rounds of the season, it's goofy. Figure it out. Reconstruct the league as a whole. Don't relegate anybody because now you got to go to court. Could have told you were going to go to court at the end of March. Now it's mid-June. You're going to court. You're trying to start a season August 1st, which doesn't make any sense anyway, because now UEFA wants to hold things back to finish the season in August, and you knew that when you set your day to start on August 1st. But again, you're not making any smart decisions in Scotland, and you're making everything worse. There is no reason for them to keep making the same dumb decisions day after day after day after day. And now you're going to have to go to the courts to sort this out. And the other element of it that, yes, you do have to factor into it, and I don't think Hearts was stupid in this. Ann Budge is not stupid by any stretch. She brought somebody to the table that was going to commit a lot of money to help all the clubs in Scotland deal with this. I'm waiting for that amount of money to be held up while this is being challenged. And I would have no problem with her doing that. I would have no problem with her telling James Anderson, yeah, hold off on that check for a minute. No problem with that. The fact that, and that shouldn't give her, oh, well, no, they can't relegate Hearts because of that. No, they shouldn't relegate Hearts because they didn't finish the season. There's no gain to relegating Hearts here. Yeah, you're going to have to split TV money a little bit further this upcoming season. Yeah, well, you just signed a new deal and you got more money coming in. And, oh, yeah, by the way, this guy's going to kick in more money, too, to help all of you. There's no valid reason for it. There's no justification. There's no advantage to doing it. And now you're going to have to fight it out in the courts. And I really wonder if there is going to be that little game being played of, yo, James, don't send that check yet. I want to wait and see how this plays out. No problem with that if that happens.
No, zero. So would you call Doncaster's new appointment irony?
It's beyond irony. It's just pathetic. It's pathetic because UEFA's got to have some people who are not involved in ruining the game in their country that can serve on that committee. Because Doncaster could have fixed this so many steps along the way, and he's not, and he's made it worse. So there's no reason for him to be on that committee. It's a joke, and you have to consider the committee a joke. And if they're going to be in the overseeing control and ethics and grievances, he hasn't handled grievances in Scotland very well. He didn't handle ethics in Scotland very well, and he hasn't controlled anything. So that would be the reason why he shouldn't be on the committee.
Can I get an amen to end hour number one?
It's sad and pathetic because Scotland has a rich history in this game, and it's just sad to see Scottish football turn into a joke right now. It shouldn't be.
Would you like for me to thank somebody as we head into hour number two?
Yep. Why don't you tell us all about our good friend Steve Apolinsky?
I can do that. Apolinsky & Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything SDH and the SDH network. You can catch up with him a couple of different ways for wrongful death and serious injury lawsuits. Over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for clients in Georgia and Alabama. You can cut him an email personally, Steve, S-T-E-V-E, at aa-legal.com. Give them a call, 443-777-9191. Get your free consultation that way. Go to the website, aa-legal.com. The millisecond that website pops up on your browser, lower right-hand corner. Chat window. So if you want to talk to somebody right this, well, not right this very second. You can do it 24/7, 365, or 366, depending on how many days there are in the year. aa-legal.com recognizes Legal Aid by Georgia Trend Magazine, one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. Apolinsky & Associates, LLC, wrongful death and serious injury cases. Catch up with a couple of different ways. The website is aa-legal.com.
People can multitask. If they have to talk to Steve Apolinsky on the website, they can do that while they're listening to the show.
Okay, well, then multitask away. If that's what you're up for, then multitask away.
What's wrong with multitasking?
Absolutely nothing. I'm just saying, if you want to multitask, then multitask.
Man, people can multitask. I have faith in our listeners. All right, we got more madness to talk about in this country, so we'll come back to Europe later. Jeff Carlisle over at ESPN has a write-up on the Las Vegas Lights situation. Eric Winalda was fired about 8 o'clock Eastern time, 7, 8 o'clock Eastern time, somewhere in that ballpark. Sporting director and coach. The statement, effectively immediately, Eric Winalda is no longer head coach of Las Vegas Lights FC. We continue to be hopeful that Lights FC will return to play later this season, provided a safe environment can be assured for our players, fans, and staff. We'll talk about that part with USL here in a minute. Brett Lashbrook, who's the owner of Las Vegas Lights, reached by telephone. He told Carlisle, "Something happened today. It is 100% my decision. I woke up this morning not anticipating this or wanting this to happen or knowing anything about this. By the end of the day, I felt like it was my choice and that it was the right thing to do." Lashbrook said it had nothing to do with finances or the return to play or the coronavirus pandemic. The timing of it is far from ideal. We have a game next month. Winalda said this. In Las Vegas, for Brett Lashbrook, it's never been about soccer. I'm a soccer guy, and that's the reason why we parted ways. Lashbrook did say to Carlisle that he asked the Vegas players to sign a waiver releasing the team from liability if a player contracted COVID-19. The players refused. They opted to turn that request over to the Players Association. In the interim, Winalda and his staff were prohibited from holding formal practices. Lashbrook said, "If we're practicing in a public park, which is where we practice, there has to be an acknowledgement of that risk." One source with knowledge of the situation told Carlisle that the team trained on Wednesday, but that other than dropping off equipment, Winalda didn't take part. When asked if Winalda was running practices when he wasn't supposed to, Lashbrook declined to comment. And there's a little bit more out of Vegas on this as well. It's from Alan Snell at Las Vegas Sports Biz. Winalda told Snell, of course he'll say no about this being cost-related. Winalda said, and this is not a quote, Winalda said Lashbrook wanted him to take a pay cut of about 70%. In the end, it was a mutual decision, said Winalda, who expects to be in Europe in a coaching position in 3 to 6 weeks. He repeated the comment about, I wanted to make it about soccer. Brett Lashbrook wanted to make it a show. His ideology is different from mine. And he also said, a lot of owners are under immense cost pressure right now. And that's a fact. We've talked about it from every league in the world, especially a league like USL Championship, which the overwhelming majority of their revenue is tied to having matches with people in attendance. You also have this, which has to be understood as part of the conversation, at least tangentially. Lashbrook's plan, and this was brought up last year, is to sell the team to hedge fund manager billionaire Seth Klarman, who's working with San Diego County-based dealmaker Floyd Kephart in hopes of striking an arrangement with the city to rebuild the Cashman Center area where they play, a former minor league baseball park that is all soccer right now. They're working with the city to rebuild that area and the Las Vegas Boulevard corridor while also building a new MLS soccer stadium. So there were 2 bids that popped up out of Vegas talking about MLS last year. This was one, which was rebuilding where the Lights play, and it was tied in some way to the Lights. And the other was going to be playing at the new big stadium where the Raiders play. Those were the 2, and they were completely separate and kind of got quiet towards the end of the calendar year, and we haven't heard anything in a while. All of that factors into this. Could it be strictly down to money? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think Eric Winalda works cheap. He shouldn't, not with his pedigree, not with his resume. He's not going to be an inexpensive coach for a team that probably has to cut every dollar that they can right now. That has to factor into it. I think it's kind of silly to say that it has nothing to do with it. Are there other things that factor into it too? Yeah, probably, because these things are rarely just simple, cut and dried. The whole training thing, I'd seen some whispers of that, about things about training, and they weren't supposed to be training, but they did train, and I don't know how how that worked. I hadn't heard anything about the waiver until Carlisle's piece and that incident. That takes us, and I'm sure we'll hear more about Winalda in Vegas. Eric will state his case. He always does, and he will make it clear at least what happened on his end of it. We'll see what Brett Lashbrook has to say. But the bigger picture with USL is Jeff Reuter's piece at The Athletic. They reached the terms of a return to play around 1 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and they described as grueling days of finalizing the details. We had been hearing that those days had been continuing, and when we didn't have an update on Wednesday early in the day, it was kind of like, all right, what's gone wrong? Because I think the expectation was that we would hear something before this. USL League One does not have an agreement to return to play yet, and the USL and USL Players Association declined to comment on that. One big element here is that in Championship, player salaries, no change, no pay cut. Maybe one reason is that money that is coming from the league to the clubs would probably make a lot of sense, right? That's going to mitigate any kind of pay cut that you might need to do to try to save money elsewhere. In the event that a team would be unable to play in 2020, the club would be obligated to pay their players in full. They have to pay the contract out if the team doesn't play. That makes you think that maybe there's going to be some teams that do not play this season. And there's already been those talks about MLS-owned Championship teams and League One teams not wanting to play. I've heard everything imaginable about that element of it. Nothing specific on Atlanta, although I would assume, based off what we've seen from them in the past, that they're going to want to play. They've been training. They've been very clear in talking about training and returning to play. I think they're on the want-to-play side. Red Bulls take this league very seriously. They take their second team very seriously. I would assume they're in that side of it. The rest of it is hard to tell. And there's been talk that Seattle and Portland didn't want to play. I don't know. There's been talk about everybody not wanting to play. There was one thing that only 2 teams wanted to play, and that doesn't seem to be the case. I think you can look at how teams have taken their second team or their third team, how seriously they've taken it. I think the teams that take it seriously, the clubs that take it seriously, probably want to play. The clubs that don't probably don't want to play because it's a huge cost. Have to remember that. The COVID-19 testing, and this is a little different than we've seen in some other leagues, so let's get the details here. COVID-19 testing will be paid for by the clubs unless players have their own insurance, which already covers it. And again, that would save the clubs some money. Players will be required to take the PCR tests, which is the COVID-19 test. PCR test 3 days prior to the resumption of contact training. Once training resumes, players will take PCR tests every 2 weeks. That's a weird one. PCR and antibody tests will be mandatory 3 days before any game, including scrimmages, which, again, it feels really contradictory. Antibody tests, nobody's doing antibody tests that frequently. That doesn't even make sense. I believe MLS and the NBA were doing antibody tests like every 3 months. That's not something you need to do regularly. The PCR tests, if you're doing them once training resumes every 2 weeks, but then when you're back to games, they're mandatory 3 days before any game, that doesn't make any sense. You know, like, why are you doing it less in the lead up to playing games and training and in your preseason training right now? Why would you not test more there and then start testing right before you go into a game? If there's an issue, you'd like to identify it as early as possible. You should be testing more like that. And I know it's a cost, but that doesn't, there's no logic there. It doesn't make any sense. Once games resume, PCR tests become weekly occurrences. Okay, so every 2 weeks, but 3 days before any game, but then weekly once games resume. That's all a weird alignment, and I don't necessarily get it. The weekly thing, the Pac-12 came out, and they were the first Power 5 conference to come out and talk about any kind of testing on a consistent basis. They're talking about weekly testing in the Pac-12. None of the others have. So USL is not the only one talking about weekly testing. Most are doing twice-a-week testing. MLS, NBA are talking about every other day testing. MLS has talked about backing off of that once you get a few weeks in. But once a week, it's less, and the less you test, the less control you have. Also in the agreement, players who are at high risk due to medical conditions are not required to play. Players and staff continue social distancing practices, wear face masks on team buses. Teams traveling, hotels, they're going to request that they don't provide room cleaning, just more toiletries, more towels. Food must be prepared by someone in full PPE. It feels like a little bit of a cut and paste, grab this from a protocol, grab that, mix this in, do it this way. It feels a little haphazard, but we're not seeing the full protocol either, and Jeff Rutter hasn't seen it. I mean, that was all being brought up on the fly as this is going. So this morning, players are beginning the process of online voting to approve the guidelines. 24-hour window to cast their ballot. On the Players Association side, requires 2/3 of the players to vote yes, with at least 70% players willing to participate in the 2020 season. That doesn't make any sense either. Sources expect the vote to pass no matter what. Other CBA talks are going to continue in the USL. This was to get back on the field for this season, but they will continue their CBA talks. They've been ongoing for about a year and a half now. They've never had a CBA in USL. They're going to have sessions every 2 weeks to discuss CBA until they get a deal done. And that was part of the negotiation to return to play from the players. So hopefully this can lead to that down the road. But it's a start, on the championship side at least. Cost control is going to be a bigger conversation in USL Championship than maybe any other league we've talked about in coming back. So I understand that. I want to see the protocol when it's done, because I think it's probably going to end up being a little more coherent than that. That felt haphazard. I think it's going to make more sense. And I don't think the players are going to sign off on something that there's any extra risk than other leagues are facing. I think they're going to try to ensure safety for everybody involved. I mean, there's no reason not to. You just have to manage the cost. You have to manage the cost in the USL Championship. They're definitely thinking about that. Maybe Brett Lashbrook was thinking about that when it came to Eric Winalda, but you have to also guarantee safety. And the way that was written, there's a few questions, and we'll see how it comes out.
And also in the Reuter article, apparently the full protocol is 41 pages and an 8-page memorandum of understanding when it comes to those protocols will be added to player contracts as a part of going forward.
Yeah, a lot of people have had issues with any kind of MOU or waiver being signed off on by players in return to play situations. If the protocol's strong and it's well thought out and it's very well vetted, I don't have a problem with it.
Right.
I had a problem with the waiver in the SMU case because they had no plan to test regularly after the first ones, and they had no plan for what happens if somebody tests positive. And they were asking not just a basic waiver, but a waiver releasing the school from any legal liability. That's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That's completely different. An MOU understanding, because part of this, and this came up really early on in this process, I think in the Premier League, part of that MOU is these are your additional responsibilities. We are asking you to follow social distancing. We are asking you to wear a mask on road trips. We are asking you to do this. And that does need to be signed off on. So I want to see more details. 41 pages, 71 pages, 83 pages. I don't care. It's all about what's in it.
Yep.
You've got leagues that are doing this effectively and safely. That's your baseline. Follow that. Adapt it to your cost situation and your financial situation. But, yeah, there's certain basics you got to do to guarantee the safety of the players. There's just no way around it.
In the timeline this morning, Tafka, which gets us to our next subject, He says, Fox and ESPN not getting along? Shocking. Also, someone tell me how it costs $100,000 to broadcast or produce a match. I'm not necessarily criticizing. I just don't know the ins and outs.
I don't know all the ins and outs either. I just talk on the thing. But that kind of leads us in. I could have got there first if you'd given me a heads up. Sam Stejskal at The Athletic wrote yesterday about why we don't have a schedule yet in MLS. And, we kind of figured it had to do with TV, but we were thinking more from a scheduling perspective. According to sources with knowledge of the situation for Stejskal, they've had a difficult time hammering out the sub-licensing agreement. Remember, ESPN is producing this. They are producing it on their property. There's no point in them taking their cameras out, Fox bringing their cameras in. That's not smart from a COVID-19 perspective, let alone a cost perspective. Yeah. So ESPN's producing everything. They're trying to sub-license out to Fox and to Univision. Okay, you can have this game, you can do this game, you can do this game. But you're going to get a feed from us. And, yeah, you're going to have to pay us for that. I mean, that's part of the deal. You would be paying for your production. We're asking you to pay for the production that's going to give you a broadcast. ESPN spends more than Fox on their production. And I think Tafka's question's irrelevant in this situation because nobody's saying that ESPN's wasting money on it. They spend around $100,000 on a regular season match. Fox spends around $75,000 for their matches on FS1. I've never been able to really tell a difference, so I wouldn't have known. But that comes down to cameras, camera operators, producers, engineers, all the stuff that goes into a broadcast. Yep. And it's all about the rates you have. It's probably a lot to do with the partnerships you have and the people you work with and et cetera, et cetera. So I think, and I don't know this for a fact, I think generally ESPN probably spends a little bit more because they probably have a lot of people they've worked with for a long period of time who have, earned raises over the years. When you're talking producers, they've put, top people on these games. ESPN's been pretty clear in putting their top soccer people on these games, and they don't come cheap. So they're also, it's going to be more costly to do this anyway because you're going to have to house people there because you're going to be doing games every day. It's not like a situation where, you go and hire a crew in a city because you've got a game there and bring the producer in and you're flying them in for the day leading up, 2 days leading up. You do the game, you go home. They're going to live in Orlando for a month plus. Yep. So that's going to add to the cost. They're also adding some different elements because the broadcast is going to be different. You don't have fans in the stands. So the average production cost is going to be around $125,000 per game. Fox was normally spending $75,000. That's a big jump for them. So that's the problem. Don't know about Univision's stance. Don't know where they fall into this. I would assume they're not spending as much as ESPN, but I don't know that for sure. Fox not happy about how everything has come down to begin with. I don't think there's any way around that. Look, the only way you were going to get something like this done was to do it at a property like Disney that, Disney and ESPN, that's kind of the way it is. Fox doesn't have an alternative site that they could do the same thing. So it is what it is. ESPN could keep all the games, but MLS wants them to be across all their partners. That would be the ideal way to do it, hence the sub-licensing back and forth. I don't know what you can do about it. And Stejskal gets into, now this is a problem for a future rights agreement. I think that's minimal. I think whatever issues that Fox could have with the way everything's gone down, and that could affect a future rights agreement for them, well, ESPN's probably really happy about the way things have gone down, and maybe they pick up the slack. There's going to be other partners as well that are going to be looking to get to the table. CBS, who's putting money into soccer like never before. Maybe they try to come to the table and buy Fox's portion of it. It's not Fox is mad now, you can't do anything. No, you don't want your partner to be mad. You want to sort this out. Future deal's future deal. I don't think they have anything to do with anything. The league's trying to work it out. I don't know how you're going to do it. I don't know if ESPN's going to have to take a little bit of a hit for the team here, and Fox is going to have to pony up a little bit more money than they typically do for the team here. that's how these things are going to go. They're going to come to a number. It probably won't be the full number of what ESPN is paying for it. They'll probably be able to find a way to make everything work. Figure out a number. The league's got to broker it. Get it done. Let's get this thing announced. Let's get these games scheduled for TV. Now you have MLB. It looked good for a little while, and then by the end of the night, it was like, oh, no, now we're all mad at one another again. So who knows? Major League Baseball might be back by the end of July. That could affect scheduling a little bit, but I think it's minimal. I think there's workarounds for it. The other thing in Stejkol's piece, there was a part about, is anybody concerned about the uptick in positive cases in Orlando? And both sides said no, they're keeping an eye on it. The protocols protect them from all of that, which is just a lot of what we talked about yesterday. The transfer windows, Stejkol said that, you're seeing it now. You're getting teams signing homegrown players, USL players. Sources told Stejkol that MLS will soon open a 2-day transfer window. We suggested that. We said it might look like the end of the season before the expansion draft small window. So a 2-day window to facilitate signings prior to the start of the Orlando tournament. Then a longer window sometime after that. I wonder if they'll try to line up that longer window along with the European leagues, which would basically be the month of September. Maybe MLS can find a way to do it from the end of the Orlando tournament to October 5th. If they can stretch it to October 5th, the business they could generate would be worth it. Tie it to the window in Europe. That's where you're going to have opportunities to buy, but also opportunities to sell. Try to get there if you can. Get as close as you can to it so there's some overlap so you can make deals in that market. I think that's going to be a very important thing for MLS to be able to do. So we'll see, but they will have an opportunity to add players before the tournament. That's key. I think we already saw that with guys like Franco Jara, Brian Galvan for Colorado, some of these other signings we're seeing. Rosters will be able to change ahead of the tournament. Then they'll be somewhat locked. Then you'll have a window open afterwards. That'll be the summer window for MLS.
Yeah, Tafka, as a bit of a baseline, if you were to take a production that has, say, 7 cameras, the TV production truck, the big things that you see parked in the undersides of stadiums or college football games and that kind of thing, you're probably talking in a very basic production about $35,000 just for the personnel and, say, 7 cameras, everybody inside the truck, all that kind of stuff. And then you add, like Jason was talking about, the experience of the personnel. Then if you're going to add cameras, if you're going to add personnel on the field, if you're going to be adding all kinds of elements to it, I could see how a normal production gets you to that $75,000 number that Fox is at. And, you're looking at having local people each and every time where you're flying in your producer and you're using local crews that you've used for quite some time. So the experience is there. The bells and whistles part, I could see where that could be the extra $25,000 that ESPN is trying to do. Is that in personnel? Is that in the amount of money that you're using in room and board? What's room and board situation? How is that being taken care of? How many people are you talking about in this entire event that you're looking at? So there are a lot of the factors involving the personnel and the addition of all of those bells and whistles that they've been talking about to get you to that $125,000 number. I read that Fox is only spending $75,000 on average because they look at what they're putting in for a production plus what they're getting for ratings as a part of their gauge. So I understand where ESPN's going from 100 to 125. I think that by the end of it, I think Fox probably comes up a little bit in their bid, and ESPN is probably going to end up taking some of it economically. But that's just where it is to give you a baseline as to what it has to do when it comes to a television production and just personnel. And it's a very bare bones thing to get you started at about $35,000.
Yeah, and you're not doing any of these at bare bones at all. So,
nope.
I mean, you got people who command a good check for the work, and it's because they do good work, and that's why you've seen, I think, higher quality broadcasts on both on Fox and on ESPN over the years. They've put more resources towards providing a better broadcast. You don't want it to go cheap now.
No.
And I think ESPN actually bumping the number up a little bit and adding some bells and whistles is a good sign for what this tournament will look like. Now you just got to figure out with a partner who's not as invested in it, who is not producing the whole thing, and a partner who typically spends a little bit less and still provides a good product. Like, don't get me wrong. I've never thought there was a 25% difference in how much the two are spending on their product.
Right.
It's not about that, but now you're going to have to find a way to reconcile those dollars and cents a little bit, or it's just going to all be on ESPN, and that's the alternative. I don't think that's what the league wants, but that's the alternative, and you need to make a decision soon. I don't know what kind of deadline you're looking at, but you need to announce the schedule pretty soon. I think what you need to understand is, as we're already seeing, I've seen some rumors of when Montreal's going to play. I've seen some rumors of when Minnesota's going to play. You're already hearing some rumors. The schedule's probably basically determined, but it's about slotting into and announcing the TV part of it. You're not going to announce the schedule before you announce it with the TV portion. So it's not that they haven't done a schedule. It's finalizing the TV portion to make the announcement. So we'll hear it here very, very soon. All right, Chris Ashley shared this earlier. ATL UTD Prospect shared it late last night. Remember Jürgen Damm? Jürgen Damm officially is gone from Tigres. There was Liga MX they call it like the Liga MX draft. It's not a draft, but it's where a lot of the owners typically get together and figure out what they're going to do next season. You do see trades. You do see transfers for little or no money going both ways. It's essentially a trade like we have in our league. You see a lot of that around the time in between seasons. Well, right now it's a little different in Mexico, but it came out that Damm was not going to continue with Tigres. That had already been announced. The rumors earlier in the year were that he'd be coming to Atlanta. I have not seen recent reports out of Mexico linking him to Atlanta. I haven't seen anybody say that's not going to happen either. Tigres had a video come out yesterday of Damm's time there with an official message from him thanking the fans and for his time at the club. So he's going to be somewhere. Does he come to Atlanta? Can you make that work with the cap? Is he the player you need now with other signings you've made? Do you maybe have to change that because of Joseph's injury? I don't know. I haven't seen an ATL UTD Prospects, really good outlet. Lots of great information on the academy side, on players who move into the college game. I haven't seen the recent reports from Mexico linking him to Atlanta United. I haven't seen that yet. I'm not saying they're not out there. I just haven't seen them yet. I haven't seen a change in anything on Damm yet because there's a ton of things going on in the game in Mexico. It could have kind of got lost in the shuffle. Now that he is officially gone from Tigres, I think we'll start to hear a little bit more about next steps for him. And maybe it's Atlanta, maybe it's not.
No. And as you mentioned, Jürgen Damm, I'm sitting here trying to see if there's any recent, within the last day, ever since that announcement was put out by Tigres on their official account, it just, everyone who's writing an article is making the assumption his next step is in MLS without announcing a specific team now that he's no longer with Tigres, but they're not adding any kind of specificity to it.
Yeah, I just haven't seen anything. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Another air horn-worthy note. This was a Zoom forum titled Soccer in the Time of COVID-19. Felipe Cardenas of The Athletic tweeted out that Darren Eales mentioned the possibility of drive-in watch parties at the Home Depot backyard, which is located next to the Benz. Also said that Atlanta United has created an anti-racism and social injustice working group within the club that includes players and employees. The quote is, "We have a higher duty here with Atlanta United to not just acknowledge that injustice, but to do something about it." Keep an eye on that. I'm sure more will come out from that. We've heard, we've talked about it throughout all this, the work the Blank Foundation has done on a variety of fronts during COVID-19, and what they've done, as long as I can remember, in terms of building community and everything from employability and developing work training and employing residents who come through that training in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Lots of different elements. There was a little bit of shade thrown early on when it became a judging contest of people's statements. And Atlanta United, Arthur Blank, the Atlanta Falcons, all of that, because it's all together, have historically done a ton in the community. This is no different. They don't just throw things around for effect either, and I think that's something you got to understand. And that's honestly a very Atlanta thing too. If you've read about the history of this city, if you know the history of the city well, Robert Woodruff was the head of Coca-Cola for a long, long time. And where Atlanta is different from a lot of cities is that Atlanta's been very business focused and very growth focused, and it hasn't been, run by political parties. It hasn't been run strictly by, the church. It's been run by business, and Robert Woodruff kind of was the one who helped oversee a lot of different mayors and leadership in this city. And Robert Woodruff was somebody who, his name's on things now, and the Woodruff family name is on things now. There are a lot of things that he put money up for or helped make happen behind the scenes that wasn't credited to him, and that's the way he wanted it. The Blank Foundation and Arthur Blank specifically, you've seen a lot of that as well. I've had the opportunity to work with them on things, starting a soccer league at the John Hope Community Center in Castleberry Hill, right between Castleberry Hill and Vine City. It was the first youth soccer league in that community, and that was right at the very beginning of a team being announced. Blank Foundation, and at that time it went through the Falcons Youth Foundation, supported Soccer in the Streets programming in a number of communities all over the city in the first decade of the 2000s. They do a lot, and what they're doing with this is a really smart step to do things right going forward and to have more of a collaborative impact. It's not to say they haven't been doing it before, and I think anybody who tried to tell you that was lying, basically. But they are going to continue to do what they do, which is make Atlanta a better place. And that's something the foundation and Arthur as an individual and all of his businesses have always done. This is nothing new, and I'm very excited to see what they do to make Atlanta a better place, because as we've said through all this, I think sports, soccer and football, the two that Arthur's involved in, we've seen what the Atlanta Hawks have been doing, and they've been doing great work in the community. The Braves, teams have a power that you can harness for good, and it's a power that is hard to quantify. So if they are leading some of this charge in dealing with injustice, in dealing with everything in a community to make it better, because it's injustice, it's employability, it's youth development, it's all of those things that they deal with. Access to food. I mean, the Blank Foundation's been involved in farmers markets at MARTA stations, things like that. It's all of it about making the community a better place and lifting everybody up, and they've always done it. They're going to continue to do it, and I think they're going to use the power of the Falcons and Atlanta United to be even more impactful with it. But don't question their intent. Don't question their motives. I think they've done amazing work. And when you look at the history of Atlanta, after Robert Woodruff, when you start talking about people who have made Atlanta a better place, Arthur Blank's right there. And he's got a lot more to do, and he's going to continue to do it. He always has.
And like you, I am looking forward to seeing those next steps when it comes to all of this. And when you see these kinds of quotes that are out there that are reinforcing the direction that Arthur Blank and anyone associated with Arthur Blank, that they understand, they get it, they understand the larger picture. While sports is a part of it and it can be part of that engine, that there is a larger picture at play. I am looking forward to, like you, seeing where those next steps lead.
Mr. Fantastic on Twitter just asked about the Jürgen Damm rumors. I think from, can he help Atlanta United? Yeah, he's a player who has always had a ton of potential. He's one of the fastest players in the world, and we know Atlanta United likes speed. Is there still a need for where he fits into this team? Yeah, but the Joseph Martinez injury has maybe changed that conversation a little bit. He's not a number 9. Could you bring him in to fit into an offense that already has Pity Martinez, Ezequiel Barco, Mateus Rossetto, Manuel Castro? Yeah, I don't know where all the playing time is going to come from, and that would be my question. If you bring him in, I think you're maybe talking about changing the shape from the 3-4-3 that we've seen to try to shoehorn all of that in, but you've got to have some balance defensively. You don't want it to become too top-heavy. And I think he's a really talented player, but I don't know exactly how he fits yet if he's going to come here. And I had that concern before the Joseph injury. I wonder now if you might need to use resources in a different way, unless you're comfortable with what you have, with Adam John, with J.J. Williams, also with Pity Martinez moving up top, or if you see Jürgen Damm as somebody who can play up top in this system. And he could. He hasn't really done it, but could he in this system? Players are not as rigid in a position as sometimes we make them out to be. So, if Frank has identified that he could be that guy, maybe. I just don't know if there's going to be enough minutes to go around for everybody. Now, remember, Castro is on loan. Castro was a loan option at the end of the month. He's featured in all the communications from the club pretty regularly here lately, so I don't think there's a rush for that loan not to be renewed, but not everybody can play in the group you have now, let alone if you add another attacking player to it. So I don't know. I'm intrigued by the whole decision.
La Opinion yesterday.
Anyway.
Yeah. Yes. La Opinion yesterday after the video was posted by Tigres down in their story. This is through Google Translate. Now the future of the Mexican player of German descent is in soccer in the United States since he announced his departure last February after refusing to renew with the Mexican club due to the lack of regularity under the command of Ricardo Ferretti. So he took the offer from Atlanta United, the club he is expected to report to on June 30, and then La Opinion links to the TUDN article back from February 25th, where they said that he was coming.
And if he signed a pre-contract, then yeah, it would. June 30 would be where he would be one of those players you could bring in ahead of this tournament. We'll see. We'll see. I'll just be curious to see how the minutes work with him. But you talk about a player who would be that Tito Villalba replacement, speed, pure speed. Yeah. And he was a guy who I think the expectation even a year ago was for him to go to Europe at the end of this time with Tigres. And he hasn't gotten that consistent playing time under Tuca Ferretti. But we've seen players come here in that situation. Villalba was one of them. Joseph Martinez was one of them. Players who, for whatever reason, development, projection, all of it stalled out at a club they were at. Atlanta United brought them in here and it got the best out of them. Maybe Jürgen Damm could be that kind of guy. Pure speed, you're getting it, and you know how much this team loves speed. I would just be curious what that would do for the group as a whole in terms of a starting lineup, and specifically when it comes to Emmanuel Castro, because I feel like that might be a little redundant with both of them in that type of situation. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how the pieces fit if that's the situation. That was reported back in February. There wasn't a whole lot of legs to it on this side of the conversation, in the MLS side of it. All those reports were coming out of Mexico. We'll see if they're accurate.
I don't know, Ricky, if Jason will allow this to happen.
What?
Ricky Ricardo says he came in midway in the show.
Okay.
And he also came in midway through the ad read for Apolinsky and Associates LLC. And he says he needs me to wrap it from this point forward.
Oh, no. That's frightening. That's really frightening. I don't like the idea at all.
That's why I said I didn't think you'd be a fan.
Well, I don't think you could do it, first off.
I don't think I could do it either.
Oh, okay. Well, then you can't do it. If you don't have the confidence to do it, then no, you're not going to do it. If you had answered that and you said, "Yeah, I can do this. I got it," then yeah, okay, go for it. But no, you're not confident enough, so you can't do it.
I can read in time to the music, as people who have heard, that I can do that. But when it comes to dropping rhyme and getting down with the Steve Apolinsky and the Apolinsky and Associates,
no, you can't do it. No, you already ruined it. You can't do it anymore. No.
And boom goes the dynamite.
No, you're not.
All right.
No, you can't do that. You're not rapping at all.
No, you don't want
getting down with that the way you said it. Man, just to go ahead and tell somebody to get off your porch.
Get off my porch.
Jeez.
Tafka has a Jurgen Dahm question. He says, as a free transfer in 27, it's likely he'd be at best a TAM signing. It would be a good value grab, in my opinion. As you said, 1, Castro's on loan. 2, Barco and Pitti are both on European radars. And 3, perhaps there is no guarantee of playing time to John, Williams, etc.
Well, John and Williams are separate. They're number 9s in this conversation. And Pitti could be the number 9, but Pitti could go different places. John and Williams aren't. I think Williams maybe could play out wide in a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 situation, but haven't really seen it. John is a number 9. That's his position. So put them to the side. You need, even if you're playing with a false 9, you need number 9s in your team to be able to play in that kind of typical way from time to time. So you're going to have them even if they're not starting. Okay, leave that to the side. But Pitti, Barco, Rossetto, Castro, Dahm. This always comes up, and I feel like I'm always the one who pushes back on the idea of just go get every player you can, and if they're all great, that's fine. They'll all be okay with not playing. You have to manage that part of it. Dahm is not happy at Tigres. He played out his contract and walked on a free because he wasn't seeing playing time. So he's going to come here expecting playing time. And at whose expense is that going to come from? Because I think Matteo Rossetto came here expecting playing time because he wasn't getting it regularly in Brazil. Barco and Pitti, you're not benching either one of them. Don't forget it.
No.
Castro wasn't getting playing time at Estudiantes. He wants to play. Now, he is on a loan. You don't have a long-term future committed to him. You just signed Rossetto. You'd expect that has at least a couple of years to it. Barco and Pitti are not running out of contract at any point, and yes, they're on European radars, but they're not gone yet. You have to find that balance, and Dahm to come here, in my estimation, would be coming here to play. So if he's coming to play, what does that mean for the rest of the group? Could you see a situation where you go to a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 type of false 9, which is how we've seen it typically in the Lionel Messi time at Barcelona anyway, where the number 9 drops into the midfield basically to take a 4-2-3-1 and turn it into kind of a diamond-ish midfield with 2 wider players who tuck inside to come in and attack. Pitti could play that role, but then you're looking at, okay, where do you fit Dahm? Probably on the right. Where do you fit Barco? Probably on the left, because your Rossetto would be central, unless you see it and you feel like Barco should be central and Rossetto could play out wide, which he's played a little out wide in his career, but not primarily. Okay, or you just sit Rossetto and then you change it around even more. It's tricky. It can be done, and you've got the time to figure it out. And look, he's a player who's got potential. I mean, he was a very promising up-and-coming guy with the Mexican national team, expected to go to Europe. That hasn't happened. He is 27. Is he what he is now? Can he be more? If you're bringing him in, you would be banking on that. But how do you make the dynamic work with everybody? Because you have players who have come here and are expecting to play, whose minutes could be impacted. That's not John and Williams to me. They're a separate conversation. It's not Pitti and Barco because you're not sitting them no matter what. It's guys like Josetu, Castro, which is a loan, which you could decide that, hey, it's bad luck, it didn't work out, but we're going to move on. Okay, that would maybe make the most sense if you were going to bring Dom in and you're committed to it. Maybe Castro knew that coming in, and it just didn't work because of the COVID-19 outbreak. He didn't get to play because it wasn't going to happen. Maybe that's why it was a loan for 6 months to June 30, and then Dom was going to come in that spot. Don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out very soon, but he is gone from Tigres now, and we haven't seen an update to his potential future, but things are a little different now on a lot of fronts, and we'll see if they've changed.
All right, what else is on your rundown this morning?
Quite a few different things. Australia. Let's talk about player Ellie Carpenter, who the Portland Thorns transferred to Lyon. Terms of the deal not disclosed. She was part of the top 100 female footballers of 2019 list from The Guardian. Lyon is the best team in the world on the women's side. As good as North Carolina Courage is, I don't think there's much of a comparison here. And when you see a defender from Australia, from NWSL, go to Lyon, first, you recognize her quality. Second, when you start talking about Australia as a whole, Sam Kerr moved to Chelsea, a lot of money. Carpenter moving to Lyon, biggest club in the world, probably going to get paid very well. Australia was a good squad in the World Cup last year, but if they get the rights to host 2023 with Kerr at a top club, with Carpenter at a top club, with other players starting to emerge, I think they're one of the favorites if they're hosting, because you've got players who are really stepping up into the world, and it's interesting to see Australia on the men's side. The A-League is a absolute mess. Fox yanked games off of their reported calendar because of some back and forth with the league, reportedly the federation in Australia, because the league broadcast rights are tied to the federation. Reportedly, they sent an invoice to Fox for the next installment of their agreed-upon money, and then Fox pulled games off a calendar. So they're going back and forth, and something's got to get done quickly. The men's side's a mess domestically, but the women's side is really growing and developing in Australia, and that dichotomy is odd to see. And I hope that the FA stuff and the Fox stuff and the A-League stuff doesn't hurt the W League, because you've got players who have come through the W League and then come to NWSL or went straight to Europe and are now at some of the biggest clubs in the world and some of the best players in the world. It's something we need to see continue to happen here in this country as well, and maybe a new team in Los Angeles will be part of it. Meg Linehan at The Athletic writes that there is a potential expansion franchise, and updated reports, I think everybody thought it was LAFC, updated reports say it's the Galaxy who are involved in this, but the primary name is Julie Ehrman. She's the CEO and president of WFC LA Inc. That's on the trademark applications. She is a serial entrepreneur. She's advised multiple startups, mostly in gaming, digital media. They have a couple of names that trademark applications have been filed for: Angel City FC and Angel City Football Club. I like it. I'm down with that. That works. Would love to see a team in LA. Be a huge move for NWSL. I would have thought LAFC would have been all over it, and they've talked about it and they've explored it. Mia Hamm's part of the ownership group. Looks like the Galaxy are going to be the ones who get it done in some kind of partnership with Julie Ehrman and what she's working on. So keep an eye on that. That'd be another huge step for the NWSL, who has added sponsors during this. They're going to get some kind of a competition done. They're going to get on CBS, and now they might get back into one of the biggest markets in the country in Los Angeles, who hasn't had a pro women's team in 10 years, since the Los Angeles Soul folded in the early days of the WPS. Other things. So we mentioned the transfer windows in Europe. We're getting the reports now from Chelsea and RB Leipzig. Timo Werner is going to Chelsea. Looks like around 50 million euro. And Chelsea didn't say it, but they said it, that he's not going to play for RB Leipzig in the Champions League matches when it restarts. Those games, the remaining round of 16 games, got a little bit of news out of Bild earlier that Bayern's return leg against Chelsea will only take place at home in Munich if everybody's playing in their original sites. It's all or nothing. If Barcelona, Manchester, Turin, Munich, if they can't all host games, and all are going to host the games in this run of league matches, if something happens and all of them can't host, then those games would all be moved to Portugal. Otherwise, the second leg of the round of 16 games will be played in home stadiums. Then the quarterfinals will be played in Portugal. Werner, it's reported by Kicker that he will not play for RB Leipzig. That had been reported before. Chelsea's statement said something like, we're looking forward to him joining his new teammates in July. Well, the Champions League games are going to finish in August. So if he's going to London in July, well, he's not going to play in that. So that is what it is. It's been reported. It's not really a shock. Newcastle still a mess. Nothing's really changed. They're just waiting on the Premier League to deal with this stuff. It's taken longer than it ever has before, which is not a surprise because it's more complicated. This statement is why I don't think this is going to happen, and I think Mike Ashley's going to have to turn to Henry Morris of Clear TV and get a deal done. This is from the Senior Legal Counsel and Director of Corporate Affairs, David Sugden of BN Sports. Last night he said, I can't comment on whether the deal will go ahead. All I would say is that from BN and other broadcasters' perspective, you have to protect intellectual property. And if you allow the very entity that has been stealing the Premier League and Newcastle United's property for 3 years into the league, you're letting the fox into the henhouse, so to speak. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's why this is not going to happen. It can't. You can't justify it. Sky Sports has confirmed a $213.5 million rebate with the Premier League and remains in talks with other sports bodies as they're trying to get money back from stuff that didn't happen. Sky is going to receive that rebate, part of a combined $414.4 million of all of the different broadcasters that are seeking rebates from the Premier League. Sky will defer that payment until the 2021-22 season. So they're going to get money back, but they're pushing it down the road to get it back later to try to help the Premier League out. One thing that could help the Premier League out, and this is something to really keep an eye on, it's from Michael Long at Sports Pro. Digital health passports. We've mentioned this before. Avi Lassarow, who's the chief exec for Prenetics. Prenetics is doing all of the COVID-19 testing for the Premier League, I believe for the Championship in League One and League Two as well. It's a Hong Kong-based biotechnology firm. They are developing a secure test evidencing and access system that would be the first offered in sports. It's been used in some other things. It's never been used in sports. According to Lassarow, this web-based system would require fans to scan their health passport information by way of a QR code to come into a stadium. Like you scan a ticket, you would scan the health passport. That would prove that you've got a valid COVID-19 test and it produced a negative result. That would make allowing fans in the stands feel a little more comfortable because then you're having some control over who's in there and who's not. Reuters reports that the fans would opt into the system via an email, provide personal information, including a photograph. That's verified by the clubs, who would then provide the code accessed by a mobile phone. Then you would have to upload your testing results to be able to come to a match. Prenetics, it's also known as Circle DNA. If you hear that, that's Prenetics. That's the same company. They've conducted nearly 9,000 tests on the Premier League players and staff ahead of their return. Manchester City, Arsenal, Aston Villa, and Sheffield United are trialing the health passport system. Players and staff are trialing it to kind of just make sure everything's working the way it should. This is going to be trialed throughout the next 6 weeks. Lasserell says it has the possibilities for scaling it up in a sport context to stadiums and fans in a much bigger capacity. I think that's where the future is in terms of COVID-19. Today it's being used for access control. It can link to accreditation and biometrics. Ultimately, the future is how you can scale that up to fans to get them into stadiums. The capability is there for us to facilitate the safe return of fans to stadiums. It'd be a game changer. It would be an absolute game changer to be able to tie that in and then have an increased level of security of coronavirus potentially spreading in the fans. You would know that the people who came in have recently, and you have to set whatever boundary you want there, have recently tested negative for it. And it's not 100%, but it feels better than what Hungary did, where they separated the seats and then everybody just ran together anyway.
Yeah.
It feels a little safer than that. But you are going to be giving up some privacy to do that, and that's going to be the trade-off. And I could see this happening in some countries faster than others. And I think this country would be one that people are going to really beef on it. But it is making it safer to get back into stadiums quicker. I don't think there's really any way to argue that. It's just going to be down on if you want to share the information or not. Also at Sports Pro, Ed Dixon, when he talked about the Premier League in Scotland, you've got the rebates being worked out there, and they're smaller amounts, but they're maybe more important because you're talking about smaller revenues in Scotland. It looks like the SPFL and BT are close to settling at $3.1 million for what wasn't shown. Sky is continuing on, and they have a new deal that's starting, so they kind of baked in their rebate into that. It's not quite as bad as they thought it would be. People thought that in total the SPFL would have to give back $12.5 million. The Sky one is kind of baked into a new deal. I think they valued it like around 1.5 or maybe 2 million. If you have to give BT 3.1 million back, okay. You save some money, and you're going to have to pay that to Hearts and Partick Thistle. So there you go. Have fun. Good time, Scotland. Brazil is still a mess. Flamengo is not following the Federation of Rio de Janeiro rules for matches. It's a typical thing in South America. I don't know if it's a typical thing in Latin countries as a whole, but going into concentration, it's basically like we see teams go into a hotel at home before they play. It's basically to go and stay overnight and get ready for the game. Sometimes it's extended, like Napoli tried to do, and have their players go live at the training ground. Sometimes it's 24 hours. The plan, because they kind of doubled that with a little bit of a quarantine situation here in Rio, was that they would go in 48 hours before a match. Flamengo said, no, we ain't doing it. Flamengo's the one who's just, like, they're training when they're not supposed to. They're all excited to come back as fast as possible. They're like, no, we're not going to go into concentration. We're not going to go into quarantine 48 hours before the game. They say they are performing tests on the same day as the game. These are quick team exams done by means of antigen and are therefore as reliable as a PCR test. That's what Flamengo's telling you. Don't know if that's accurate. That sounds kind of crazy. But, hey, just whatever. YOLO, it's all good. Fluminense, on the other hand, is like, we don't want to play. Their players released a statement saying they were uncomfortable playing right now due to the COVID-19 situation and the lack of adequate training time, because they haven't been training. And then the arbitrator just comes out and says, no, you're starting games now.
Yeah, you're playing.
They point out that no other state championship is expected to return for the month of June, only Rio. in their statement, translated from Portuguese, which in itself demonstrates a nonsense, since in cities with much lower rates, they have not even returned to training. Globo Esporte reports that players and coaching staff and other staff were tested this week. Return to training should happen tomorrow, and they're set to play on Monday. Yeah, that's not good. But the Federation of Rio de Janeiro and the Carioca Championship is like, 3 days of training, just go play. It's all good. You know, Flamengo, you don't even want to do the tests we're telling you to take, and you don't want to stay in concentration or quarantine 48 hours before the game. Whatever. Just, nah. That seems to be how Brazil is dealing with everything as a whole. Colombia, we have an update. They're going to return to play in August. They're going to start individual training sessions by the end of this month, group training sessions in July. The competitive national league will be back in August, and that was announced by the Minister of Sport. As long as the situation allows, that's the plan. Simon Edwards of World Football Index tweeted that out yesterday. That's the roundup around the world.
Okay. I got 2 things to add to it before we go.
Okay.
Barrow will be in the Football League next season for the first time in 48 years. After National League clubs voted to decide final standings on an unweighted points-per-game basis, the decision, according to our friends at The Guardian, confirmed by majority vote. Barrow confirmed as champs of the National League. Kings Lynn wins National League North. Wealdstone wins National League South. Also, we'll see the end-of-season playoffs taking place. Harrogate and Notts County as clubs 2 and 3 go into the playoff semis. Yeovil, Borehamwood, Halifax, and Barnet participate in the quarters. Playoffs must start by July 18, finish by July 30, with teams made to pay for the testing of all players and staff, as well as the net costs of staging games. Testing is expected to cost about £100,000. And my note from Russia before we go.
Mm-hmm.
2 days prior to the restart of the RPL season, 6 Rostov players have been diagnosed with COVID-19, and the whole squad put into 14 days quarantine. This is courtesy of our friends at Russian Football News. They will not
hasn't
play.
Been following protocols.
They will not play any fixtures scheduled in this time frame. Sochi, who are due to play Rostov tomorrow, are not happy and suggest the match should take place regardless. With Rostov's entire first team in quarantine, it would see players from the academy play instead. The decision has yet to be announced by the RFU. Guess where in the standings Sochi is right now compared to Rostov?
They want to play, so I'm assuming they are not in a good spot.
Correct. They are 12th, but they are in a fight where 6 teams are separated by 3 points toward the bottom of the table, 12th in a ladder of 16.
Do you have a problem with Sochi's stance?
I don't know. It's like, it's your problem. You guys didn't follow the rules, apparently, according, if you're looking at it from outside.
If nobody else had an outbreak, and you did.
Yeah, nobody, and you did, then that's a you problem.
I think it is. I mean, that's the agreement to come back. That's part of this. The teams, the players have a responsibility to do things the right way to avoid the risk of catching coronavirus. So they gotta do it the right way. And if they don't, well, then they have to pay the price. And if paying the price in this point is fielding the youth team in this game or forfeiting, that's what it is. They shouldn't be allowed to reschedule the game at this point, because this is not the Dynamo Dresden situation. Remember, Dynamo Dresden, second division in Germany, had at the beginning of the testing for the return to play, had 2 or 3 positive tests, which happened across a few teams, and they were ordered to quarantine by the local authorities, not the league, not the national government. And then it was rescheduled because the league made that agreement with the local authorities that they could do that. The league couldn't tell them otherwise. I don't know what the Russian situation is in that regard, but they've been training for a while. Yeah. This is not like, okay, we're going to test. Because remember, Germany, you started training a week and a half before you started playing. Now, you were doing group training, you were doing individual training, but full training happened pretty short before you returned to play, shorter than most are doing now. So if you had those tests, then yeah, you're in that 14-day window. You're going to have to make some games up. Okay, that's fine. This is different. This feels like players screwed up. It affected the club. I would question about the quarantine situation. Is it that they're not trusting the testing? And that's why if other players tested negative, they're not going to trust it and they're going to make everybody go into quarantine? Is it a government situation that's forcing them into quarantine? Or is it just they're worried about an outbreak and that's why they're all going into quarantine? That would maybe need to be answered before Sochi's request can truly be understood. But somebody screwed up, and the opponent shouldn't have to miss a game because of it. But we need a little more detail on the process.
Quoting Rostov club president Artashis Arutyunyans.
Okay.
But life made its own adjustments. We have 6 sick players. This is a force majeure.
That's debatable. I mean, there's got to be more information here. It's a little hard to say, and we don't know what the situation is, so we will see. One other thing out of Germany, this is something to keep an eye on. Their last game of the season against Hoffenheim, Borussia Dortmund's going to trial some new COVID-19 prevention measures, contactless temperature checks at the entrances, automatic detection on the stands to ensure social distancing. That feels like a little bit of a step towards having fans in the stands when next season starts, and they're trialing some things to check them out. So I'll be interested to see how that goes, if that gives you some possibilities, because now we've got health passports being talked about. Now we've got some other systems that are checking the social distancing in the stands. People are working towards having fans in the stands. Financially, you need fans in the stands. The game needs that. Sports need that. We all get that. It's got to be safe. What's going to be the best approach, or is it going to be a combination of approaches? But that push is going to keep going. That train is already moving and picking up steam.
I am caught up. What about you?
I am caught up. On Twitch, a couple of things. Bartimus Prime is down the road that we talked about with Jurgen Damm replacing Castro, and yeah, I mean, that's kind of where my head's at too. Is it's looking like if Damm is coming in and Castro is on loan through the 30th, that are you going to keep both? Is that going to be redundant? We'll have to see. It would give you increased depth, which is great, but where are the minutes going to come from? So I do think that's a reasonable assumption, that the Dom deal was signed on paper or agreed to, but it wasn't signed, and he was out of contract. You could sign him to a pre-contract if you wanted to in February. It wasn't announced. Sometimes those get announced, sometimes they don't. And then you brought in Castro for a 6-month loan, so maybe it was cover until you got Jurgen Damm. Maybe things have changed now with the Joseph Martinez injury, and you keep them both. We'll see. We'll see how it works out. I'm intrigued. I mean, I just want to see more reporting on this side from it. We hadn't really seen anything about it since February until it was announced that he's not coming back to Tigres. So we will see where that goes. Was there something? Did I miss it? Greenville soccer guy Chris Ashley. Did I miss it about World Cup 2026 and Atlanta? Has there been some kind of development? Chris Ashley on the Twitch chat said 5 to 6 matches in Atlanta for World Cup 2026. Question mark, question mark, question mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. I think that was always it was in the Darren interview. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
I think that was always what was being pushed for. Atlanta was a contender all the way up to the semifinal. So if you get 3 group games, a round of 16, a quarterfinal, and a semi, that'd be 6. I think that's doable. I would love to see it. I think Atlanta gets as many games as anybody outside of whoever gets the final. And the only reason Atlanta can't get the final is it's not over 80,000 seats, which is the requirement that FIFA has for that. I don't know if you could find a way to squeeze it. They're not pushing for it, so I'm assuming they can't. Maybe things change, but last time I've seen anything about this process, it's expected that there will be 10 American cities, and there are 17 on the list right now. Atlanta and Mercedes-Benz Stadium is going to get a lot of games, whether it's 5, 6, and if it goes all the way to the semis, they're going to get a lot. Atlanta has absolutely staked its claim as one of the biggest soccer cities in this country, and it's going to get rewarded for it. The Benz is going to have a bunch of it. It's going to be awesome. I'm a little just concerned as I've been studying World Cup 94 and other World Cups and how things have come together. It's 20. The tournament would be in 6 years from now. It'd be around this time in 2026. It's going to be bigger than it's ever been. It's going to be more complicated than it's ever been because you've got Mexico, you've got Canada involved. We're a little behind in terms of knocking that list down from 17 to 10 because there's a lot that goes into hosting games in a city. You've got hotels, you've got training, you've got to figure out the logistics of what a tournament looks like. You're not going to have a team play in, I'm picking cities out at random, Los Angeles, and then 3 days later play their next group game in Atlanta. You're going to try to group them somewhat intelligently geographically. So you've got a lot of logistics to figure out. And, yeah, it's 6 years, but, man, these logistics take a lot of time. Yeah. You've got a lot of funding elements have to come into place. You've got local sponsorships. You've got, World Cup sponsors. You've got FIFA sponsors. It's a lot. So it has been slowed down because of the coronavirus outbreak. I believe the idea was to start visiting the cities that are on the list in the spring, and it's not going to happen. I think Dan Flynn is going to oversee a lot of that, former CEO of U.S. Soccer. They're going to have to catch up quick. I think that's all going to help Atlanta because Atlanta's a sure thing, with Atlanta United, with Arthur Blank, with Darren Eales involved, with the stadium, with what this city has done in the soccer realm. Atlanta's going to be fine, and if there's less time for a wild card city to pop up and grab games, Atlanta will be in great shape because it's a sure thing. So I'm just getting a little antsy as we get into that 6-year mark. It's not going to affect it. It's just going to make it a little more hectic in getting everything together because they also have to figure out what the legacy of the tournament looks like. And if you go back to 94, the money that was made by the tournament ended up starting the U.S. Soccer Foundation. And it sounds like they've come to the agreement now that profits are going to go into the foundation and grow the game. The foundation's done good things, and bringing in an influx like this one will do more good things, but it's also going to do big things for the U.S. Soccer Federation, which needs it. Look, the financials, everybody's struggling right now, and they're no exception. This is why they had a big reserve. Well, it's getting eaten up, and they're not able to do the things they wanted to do with the reserve because they're just losing money right now. And we'll see where it goes. But 26 is going to be an important tournament for soccer in this country. It could put it on a whole different stratosphere, or it's a wasted opportunity. And we have to see where that can turn into. But if Atlanta hosts that many games, man, that's going to be huge for the game in the city, which is already good. That's going to take it to a whole nother level. I really think after that World Cup, MLS can be one of the biggest leagues in the world. I really think if they do everything right, if the Federation does everything right, this game will be very different coming out of that because there will be more eyeballs, more attention, more money, more everything. And that could be, along with everything MLS does between now and then, that could be the step that pushes MLS to being one of the biggest leagues in the world. And we'll see if they take full advantage. That process, like I said, has been slowed down. We'll see what it looks like when things get announced. I would assume by the end of the year, maybe early next year, you get the cities identified and what it looks like and where the final's going to be. I think they want to do the final in New York since they did the last one at the Rose Bowl. I don't think they want to do it at the Rose Bowl again. I think it's New York or Dallas, which would be the other wild card. The stadium absolutely could hold a World Cup final.
Yep.
Semifinals, I think LA will have a semifinal. I think Atlanta will have a semifinal. And Atlanta will be in the mix with everything else. I want to see who the wild card one is, because last time they were going to do 8 cities. They ended up doing 9 because of the Silverdome, which was the wild card. It ended up not having the effect that people thought it would. That was supposed to lead to Detroit having an MLS team at the start of the league, and that has never happened. Who's going to be that city that surprises us? Is it – I don't know. I don't know who it's going to be. I have no idea. We'll see. Keep an eye on that, and keep an eye on everything coming up with World Cup. Lots of stuff to get into tomorrow. We got a whole bunch more games today. We've got things popping off all over the place about leagues coming back. Transfers are becoming a bigger conversation now. Tons of things. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back tomorrow. Mucha plata, y'all.
Ricky Ricardo, don't expect much from the League Two playoffs today. Draws, home legs on Monday. Mucha plata, y'all.